Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first of the winter session of Facebook Lives. Tonight, we're going to be talking about priority domestic hot water, what it means for you guys, and just generally what it is in case anyone is unaware. I'm joined by Kim, Richard, and Rob, and I will let them introduce themselves for those of you who haven't been on before. So, crack on, Kimbo.
Yeah, hi, so my name's Kimbo, and I run the Heating Academy here in Northampton, trying to explain the sort of basics of flow and hydraulics and that sort of thing. Big promoter in priority hot water, so you'll be hearing plenty from me tonight. It's the way forward. We've just got to educate people to understand what it's all about and the benefits of it. And if we can achieve that tonight, that will be a right result.
I might reach some of them. Go on,
yeah.
Sorry, Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard. I'm a director from 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗲𝗁𝗍𝗂 Plumbing Heat Supplies. We specialise in priority domestic hot water systems and the supply of them right the way around the UK.
Hi, I'm Rob Berridge. I'm one of the directors of Heat Engineer. I also run training courses similar to Kim's, but I concentrate on the heat loss side. Little bit of hydraulics to kind of get the foot in the door for guys, really, I guess, and then they advance onto the sergeant stripes of our Kim there and get the full qualification. That's where we're at. But yeah, big proponent of priority hot water. It's an absolute must in the industry now, and why we haven't been doing it since 2005, I just have no idea.
Okay, so let's kick off with the basics, and who wants to start with telling us a little bit about what priority domestic hot water actually means?
Okay, I'll kick off with that one then. So I think priority hot water has an unfortunate name because it conjures up that it's something specifically to do with hot water. And I have lots of guys sort of casually saying, well, why would I bother doing anything different? My hot water's just fine, thank you very much. Why would I bother learn something else or, you know, go into the unknown? The hot water side of it is just a very, very, very handy side effect. It's something you get for free. Priority hot water is actually about the heating. It's to enable to have two flow temperatures from the same boiler. So you have one high temperature to recharge the hot water, and you have then hopefully as a lower temperature as you can possibly get for the heating to get your return temperature as cool as possible to get it as far into condensing mode as possible. If you look at the average S and Y plan, they hardly ever condense. They'll condense a bit when they're warming up and they'll condense a bit when they're cooling down, but they're a one fixed temperature system, normally running somewhere around 70, 75 degrees. And either of those, you're going to get very, very, very little condensing. If we can do priority hot water, which is very simple with some control, sometimes you don't even need to change the pipe work. In fact, sometimes you don't even need to drain down to do it. You can split the two temperatures, get a high one for hot water recovery and a lower one to give you best fuel economy. That's me.
Nutshelled.
Follow that if you dare.
Yeah.
You want to go, Rich?
So with priority domestic hot water, which, as Kim said, is quite an unfortunate name for the actual terminology, because ultimately it's just about getting two flow temperatures. So like Kim said, we just want low temperatures for space heating, and then we want higher recovery temperatures for the central heating or the hot water cylinder. So he touched on the fact there's lots of different ways of doing it. Ultimately, there's a few different ways depending on whether you try and rig something together yourself or you go for a manufacturer option. So we have the traditional two-pipe method, which you can modify the two-pipe system into a priority system. So you can either do that with clever wiring. So we can actually turn S-plan systems. Not my favorite way of doing it, but we can turn S-plan systems into priority domestic hot water systems just by allowing the heating valve to be wired via the domestic hot water call for heat. So when the domestic hot water calls for heat, we can actually have the heating motorized zone valve de-energize. And that way we can actually straight away create priority hot water there. Other ways of doing it is with controls. So some controls manufacturers out there can actually do it. I know Drayton are working on their system at the moment, so they're very much aware of priority domestic hot water, want to bring their system over to that side and making sure that can do. But at the moment, it's very much in its infancy as far as third-party control manufacturers go. There's very few out there that actually do this. Literally, I can count on one hand all the third-party control manufacturers out there at the moment that do this. So it's bang in its infancy. So, and ultimately the guys we deal with day in, day out, they've been doing it, trying to do this and doing it in their day-to-day jobs quite a lot. And, traditionally the guys that are doing it are people who have fitted boilers like 𝗵𝗲𝗲𝗃 or Valiant or 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗃𝗃, and they've used those manufacturers' controls to do the priority hot water, although they've probably not realized actually that it was priority hot water. They probably just thought it was just a diverter valve and they were just recovering the domestic hot water cylinder with a different flow temperature, and they didn't really pay much attention to it. So but ultimately it's all about efficiency, and that's where we're going with it, and that's where ideally all the controls manufacturers out there need to have kind of a solution. But typically 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃, Valiant, Worcester, they have either a 3-pipe or a 4-pipe setup with their systems to achieve priority domestic hot water. But like I said, it's easy to do with a 2-pipe system. We can run a 2-pipe system even with some of the manufacturers out there. Like I'll just name a couple, Alpha or Intergas boilers. They can both do a 2-pipe system, use an NTC sensor on their boiler, and then they both have a switch live from the boiler, which can actually activate the priority valve system to actually give us priority hot water on a 2-pipe system. So that's pretty much it. I know Rob, I'll pass over to Rob because I know Rob's been championing this for ages, but long before actually I was, and probably 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗃𝗃𝗃. But I remember Rob did. I saw it ages ago, and it feels like ages ago, but it wasn't that long ago when he did a video with 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃 about priority hot water and getting lower flow temperatures, low modulation boilers, and this, like I said, this should be done since 2005, and I don't really know why that's not come about, but ultimately we're kind of being forced that way now.
Well, PDHW has come around through necessity more than anything else, I think, and I think the issue is rightly or wrongly. I mean, heat engineer, we sit on the systems group of the 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗃𝗃, Heating and Hot Water Industry Council, and I say rightly or wrongly because some people don't like it, but I kind of believe if you're not in the argument, you can't have the argument. That's the way I kind of believe it, and it is hard work. But we had a lot to do with the heating up to net zero white paper and the new Part L building regulations to try and bring those temperatures down. I mean, from a commercial background, I mean, I've been putting in, making condensing boilers condense on the heating side in the commercial side for over 15 years. Since kind of 2005, I guess it is that time. But most of the issues that we found is that obviously you couldn't have priority hot water then because the control mechanisms weren't around. So we would always split the systems up to have separate hot water circuits for separate hot water systems like RENIs or instantaneous water systems and low temperature heating systems in order to make those to get the squeeze as much efficiency out of it as we can. I think the issue is that we've had in the UK on the domestic side. I mean, we've got, I think, one Rich or Kimmo will correct me, but there's about 17 million combi boilers out there at the minute. Something like 16 or 17 million combi boilers out there at the moment that are all set up pretty much out of the box that manufacturers are sending out. And I have no idea why manufacturers are sending out condensing boilers at 70-degree flow temperatures or even 80-degree flow temperatures when there's absolutely no way. And I think any engineer that's listening to this will know that it's almost impossible to get a DT20 across one of these boilers. It's more like a DT10 or even a DT7. That's the crazy thing. So we've kind of been forced into it with our 55-degree flow temperatures, trying to get those 17 million boilers to actually start condensing, which would be a boom in itself. You imagine that 10% energy saving right the way across 17 million boilers. 17 million times the average of 12,000 kilowatt hours a year. I don't have a calculator in front of me right now, but I mean that's an amazing saving, isn't it? We could just get that to start with. So it's a complete no-brainer as to why it needs to happen. And I think that the likes of myself, Richard, Kim, and many others, in the industry now have been pushing for this for a long, long time. It's finally kind of getting some gravitas and it's taking off, which is a superb thing. But like I said, manufacturers are going to need to kind of step up to the plate now and get the mechanisms in place to facilitate this. And frankly, the boilers that are out there that can't cope with this and they won't accept things like OpenTherm protocols or that kind of stuff like that, they should be removed from sale right now, immediately.
I agree. Totally agree. And the modulation as well. I mean, it's not just about getting, getting the priority domestic hot water working. The modulation of these boilers as well is just ridiculous for the size of the properties they're going in. Because ultimately, yes, we can have bigger boilers for, so you can fit a smaller cylinder, for instance. So if we have a bigger boiler, so maybe a 30 kilowatt boiler, if you have that into a 30 kilowatt coil on a high gain cylinder, then that cylinder can be reduced in size, because obviously we don't need that volume. We can recover it really quickly if necessary. But ultimately that boiler still needs to modulate very low as well. And that's kind of the other side. So obviously we got a situation where, we want to do this prioritization of, and get these boilers condensing and get them into lower flow temperatures. But we also don't want them to cycle, because we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit as well, don't we? We when they, especially the ones that have to, the fan speeds have to go up to about 80% for them to ignite. Right. If they're cycling, every couple of minutes, and they're having to go up to that peak, and ignite, and then drop their ratio down, and then they can't get the ratio low enough, and then they're short cycling again. Obviously, we kind of, because we reduce our sealing, that's what I'm trying to actually say, is that by reducing the flow temperatures, we actually reduce our sealing height that the boiler can cope with. So if it's got too much power going into the system, then that 40 degrees Celsius gets very quickly met by the actual boiler, because of the reduced flow temperature, and they end up just cycling a hell of a lot. So it kind of comes hand in hand that, we still got manufacturers out there right now releasing boilers into the market that have still got 7 kilowatt minimum modulation levels, and
still logic was that, wasn't it? I mean, I waited and waited thinking that the new logic would be like the 𝗶 with something like 3 kilowatts, and the new logic comes out with 7. I mean, I can't even see how it complies with Part L. I don't know how it does that.
I remember saying at the time all the, and I think the interview was with Nathan, wasn't it? I think Nathan from 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗍𝗃, was that the QE2 is all well and good, beautiful, lovely boat and stuff like that, but you don't want it for your garden pond, do you? No. That's the point. It's massively oversized for what it's trying to do. That was the analogy.
Back to the priority hot water thing again. Something else that I've sort of gleaned over the years talking to guys that come here, or just generally guys that you chat to anyway, installers, is that it's this step into the unknown, and it's difficult enough for guys to actually wire up a stat OpenTherm because they think there's going to be a problem. They know the old on-off stuff works, and all the stuff they use, and you think, well, it all works okay, and no one's going to complain because everything's hot. And I sort of get that, we all like to live inside our comfort zone. But looking at upgrading S&Y plans, there isn't a compromise when you upgrade an S&Y plan to priority hot water. There isn't any aspect of it that isn't better. Normally everything's a trade-off, isn't it? You get a bit better of this, and you dip out on that a bit, but you have to put up with that. With S&Y plan, everything is better. It's quicker, the wiring's easier. I mean, guys here just won't believe that you only need 4 wires. When you're used to wiring up a Y plan that everybody cringes at, when you take out the lid off the 10-way box and all this sprung-loaded wiring with insulation tape and chocolate bottle loops out of you with all the lives and the neutrals joined together. We only need 4 wires for our priority hot water. We only need 2 for the sensor, and we need live and neutral for the diverter, and that's all that needs to go back to the boiler. Even if we go down the unvented cylinder, you need a high limit stat. I know Richard spent a long time finding the ultimate correct, cheap and cheerful, but do the job high limit stat. So now we don't even need another 2 wires going down to the boiler. We can do it all upstairs in the airing cupboard. Better than that, if there is a high limit fault, high limit stat issue, we're only going to disconnect the hot water. The central heating's still going to go. We get much better economy. We get less cycling. We get longer boiler life. We get faster hot water recovery, easier wiring, and it doesn't cost a lot, because usually if you're upgrading an S plan, if you're upgrading a Y plan, you can just turn the diverter valve around, or you can easily convert the 3-port valve into a diverter valve and turn it around. I mean, Richard was talking earlier about I think it was the Alpha and the Intergas. Now, they're my favourite 2 boilers because they're the 2-pipe type, which means you can use a remote diverter valve. The valve doesn't have to be inside the boiler. Some of the boiler manufacturers, they want the diverter valve to be inside the boiler, hence you need 4 pipes from the boiler, which becomes a bit of a problem when you're retrofitting because you've got to put extra pipes. But with a traditional old-fashioned 𝗺𝗲𝗺𝗯𝗲𝗿, 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁𝗃𝗀𝗃, or again something else that Richard's designed, we've got a very high recovery vented cylinder, so you can just take out the old one, put in the new one, turn the diverter valve round, put the appropriate boiler in. You've got more wires than you need. If it's a 𝗺𝗺𝗺𝗺, you've definitely got more wires than you need. In fact, you've got a whole bundle of wires you don't know what to do with. It's a really, really simple way of doing things. S-plan's maybe not quite so simple, but again, if you go down the controls route, hush my mouth if I say 𝗵𝗃. I know we're on the enemy's website here, but if 𝗵𝗃 do a simple upgrade where you don't need to do any pipe work. You can leave the 2 zone valves as they are, both normally closed, and their controls will do. They'll open the appropriate one at the appropriate time. I think where our lot, Drayton, are going to pull off trumps here is I think they're waiting to see rather than rushing out there with something that doesn't quite work, because there are plenty of manufacturers out there whose controls don't work at all for priority hot water. I think they've done the right thing, Drayton, in waiting and listening to what's going on and asking the right people, because I know I've spoken to control manufacturers. I know Richard and probably Rob has as well. And you get after a half a paragraph, you think, wow, this bloke doesn't really know what hot water's supposed to do. He just doesn't get it. Asking all the wrong questions. And I know we had some teething problems with 𝗵𝗃, one thing, it's all up and running now. But I think when Drayton do bring their package out, it'll have been signed off by the right people and advertised the right way to hopefully make it easy for customers or installers to understand why they might want to fit it. Because that's the thing. You say to them, why would you want to fit priority hot water? Well, I don't. Hot water's fine, thank you very much. So I mean, they missed the whole thing, and not going to get on the orange box and get all political. The thing that really pisses me off is that new part L comes out, and they're quite happy for us to fit 70, 75 degree flow temperature S and Y plants. Yet for other systems, it's got to be less than 55 degrees flow temperature. It's like the whole world doesn't understand it. And I don't forget.
Don't forget there was a long-standing argument with government, with BEIS on this, and that was whether it was going to be a mandated 55 degree flow temperature or a 50 degree mean water temperature.
Yeah.
And that was the difference. So 50 degree mean water temperature would mean you could have any flow temperature you wanted.
Yeah.
As long as you got that 50 degree mean water temperature inside, which is fine. But I mean, for anybody that's still not clear about what the reason was to drop the flow temperatures were, other than the fact of getting it into condensing mode, one of the major issues here is 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺𝗺𝗃, which is 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺𝗺𝗃, which is approved code of practice L8, which is Legionella protection. And of course, and this is the issue. Your danger zones between Legionella is between 20 and 45. Is it 20 and 45 or 20 and 40? It's 20 and 45. 23 degrees and 45 degrees. Now we know Legionella will die at 50 degrees. But is it pasteurized? And this is the thing, and this is where the water regs have always stated, 60 degrees or even above, sometimes 65 degrees, as to make sure that Legionella is dead. And obviously in commercial buildings as well, if there's any commercial guys listening, you will know that any secondary return systems on a commercial system, they have to be 55 degrees as they return back into the cylinder. Yeah. So, we're talking about a lot of old buildings here that have got a hell of a lot of transmission losses running right the way through them. So you imagine what that water's got to leave that cylinder at in order to come back at 55. 55, yeah. That's a lot of the problem that we've got with combination boilers. Is no dramas whatsoever because 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺𝗺𝗃 doesn't apply. So you can have the two things, but most people have always just set them up as one flow temperature within that. At mine at home, I've got an intergas, and my little boiler is it's stuck on. I mean, I think my pump setting's on 20%, which is the lowest it can go. On it, I can't get any lower, and I'm running everything at 45 degrees. And all I've had to do last year in my house is replace one rad. I changed from a P+ to a K2. Bob's your uncle and Fanny's your aunt. Everything worked. Yeah. It was superb. And so I don't, literally when I turn my hot water tap on now, there's no plume coming outside at all. So it's condensing even in hot water mode.
It's funny though, isn't it? For the longest time, people were going, the guys that were going, that if it's in condensing mode, there won't be any visible plume from the boiler at all. You won't see anything. And actually, installers arguing and saying, no, it doesn't matter. It's the bulk of the time, that's how it shows its high efficiency. And it's just such who got those messages out there in the first place? God knows, because I remember being on the course. I'm not going to name the manufacturer actually, but I was on a course with a big boiler manufacturer, and they were saying that on the course that the visible plume.
A good condensing boiler is the plume.
That's it. If it's condensing well, you see the plume, and it's completely the wrong message, and it's just turning this whole message round, isn't it? And making sure, because we get calls every day. Thanks to 𝗵𝗲𝗁, the amount of guys that call us and come for information, and they just want to take it to that next step. And unfortunately, manufacturers have made it really difficult. I don't know why it hasn't come across as easy as it should be, but manufacturers just made it really difficult. And the more manufacturers that can get on board with this and get their products right and actually have a very grounded methodology of getting the appliance to connect it to the appliance and get it all to work, they'll win, because ultimately the information's just not there. That's very clear from the people we talk to every day, and they want to do the systems. I have quite set patterns on the products that I actually recommend going forwards, because I used to try and recommend quite a lot of products actually and try and do different things for different jobs, but ultimately you get burnt that way, unfortunately. And because one manufacturer leaves updates a firmware somewhere or does something else, or a boiler manufacturer releases a boiler with new firmware on it and it doesn't work the way it did on the last firmware, you know what I mean? And you end up getting burnt quite badly, and I've been there too many times, unfortunately. And now I've literally two controls now that I recommend that go with certain boilers, and that's kind of it. Just because I don't trust the rest anymore. I've given everyone a go. I've tried to do everything I can. But ultimately, like Kim says and Rob said, the manufacturers need to step up, make sure their product 100% works, make sure it's easy. Because ultimately, with priority hot water, all I really want is, if it's an OpenTherm boiler, you can just connect the OpenTherm 2 wires to the boiler, and it will do OpenTherm without doing any other switching valves attached to the controls or anything like that. It should just do it straight across, and the boiler then reacts in the way it needs to via the OpenTherm connection. And it's so simple. And I'm not going to name them, but there's 2 controls out there that do that at the moment really easy. And that's where I want Drayton to go. And that's where Drayton have, they're working on that side, because ultimately everything else is a kind of a fudge. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of a, rigging up some valves here and some switch lives there and some, nothing really brings these systems together. It's obviously very easy with 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁 or Valiant, or, for a manufacturer who's got control over their controls and things like that to create that package. But there's a load more boilers out there, because ultimately for that package, you pay that price, don't you? And that's the key thing. And that's, I think, what Kimbo goes on about on his course. Yeah, you can buy the 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁 or you can buy the Valiant or the Worcester with air controls and this, that, and the other. But ultimately, you're going to pay probably £300, £400, £500 more than you are with that good boiler with those good controls and, that external valve, and it's, like I said, it doesn't cost any more. Doesn't cost any more than an S plan, doesn't cost any more than the Y plan. If anything, it's quicker and easier to do. And that's once you get your head around it, but it's just that stepping stone, isn't it? And just that getting your head around what you're trying to do.
I went to a job quite recently, a friend's house actually, and they've got an OpenTherm 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁, and they had another couple of bathrooms put in her en suites, and they had it turned into a super S plan. So the combi was now running at 75 degrees, and obviously the hot water was probably out of condensing mode some of the time, if not most of the time. And it had OpenTherm controls on it. I won't tell you, but you can guess. So I moved the two wires right from those 2 terminals to these 2 terminals, and I chucked in a 10k NTC, and we had OpenTherm, load modulation, priority hot water, and a combi. And I thought, how simple is that? I mean, I know there's not that many Super S plans about, but if you just understand the principle of it, it is simple. Why wouldn't you do that for a friend? Why wouldn't you do that for a customer? well, why would you do that for your granddaughter? And I thought, well, I'll try and look at it now.
Let's look at a massive positive on this. I mean, for the first time in our industry in a hell of a long time, well, it's certainly in the whole of my career, and I mean, I'm coming to the end of that. I'm a couple of years, and I want to be out. But it's literally, I've never ever seen it before where manufacturers have actually been on the back foot. I've seen dictatorships, if you like, going through of what policy is going to be, from chemicals through to high temperature boilers to all sorts of things like that, to maybe not even telling us the truth in 2005 when condensing boilers came out. But through pressure, through gained knowledge and stuff like that, policy has managed to be put through government. Government have accepted it, put the white papers out, put it said at 55 degrees with the manufacturer's consent.
Yeah.
And now they've gone, oops.
Yeah.
We don't actually have all the knowledge and the kit to back this up. So for once in our lives, it's actually on our side, an engineer's side, to say, right, okay, we now have got the time to learn all of this stuff, as we need to, because the manufacturers have got to catch up with us. We don't have to play ball to them anymore.
Yeah.
That's a positive for me.
It is weird times. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I can prove it by the phone calls. I've never seen so much interest in priority hot water or two flow temperatures or getting boilers to do, because this is the problem. See, I mean, there's one manufacturer out there at the moment, boiler manufacturer, that is actively telling people they can't do what I know they can do, and I told people they can do. Yeah. And they're saying that because they want to sell their own controls, where actually you don't need their controls. You can rig it up with just simple resistors on their instead of using their NTC sensors, for instance, or their outdoor sensors or whatever, to get that two flow temperature scenario. You can rig it up with resistors if you know what you're doing. And and these resistors are a couple of P, 5p. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And you can have two flow temperatures, but they're forcing people who have already invested quite heavily actually in an expensive boiler to actually go that extra mile to have the extra controls, which might mean the boiler off the wall and it's not necessary. And I think we're in those sort of times right now where you need easy solutions to bolt onto these things and easy ideas to get them condensing, because we haven't got the time to go around every single 19 million combi, or I think someone said there's 9 or 10 million system boilers out there. We haven't got the time for that. We need the easy solutions. And like I said, the easiest for like a OpenTherm boiler is 2 wires onto the boiler instead of those 2 wires being on the switch live on those same controls, and that's the big. I mean, I always put them up because whenever I go on holiday, I can't help myself. You know what I mean? I always go in the cupboard, don't you? And you go, right, what's powering this place? Do you know what I mean? And there it is. We're not in the biggest house, but there it is. Good old Ideal Logic. Normally, fair play to Ideal. They've done a amazing job, haven't they, of getting their boilers out there. God knows how it's happened, because when you actually look at the specs and look at the things which a good engineer should do, and actually look what that appliance can do in that scenario, it's not the best for that scenario, but they've done a fantastic marketing job. You can't knock it. And but every single one I go to is an Ideal Logic, and the last 2 I went to were actually on controls that could run OpenTherm, and they weren't wired up on OpenTherm.
Yeah,
and that's criminal to me. A few of the guys joke, don't they, about this super condensing efficiency thing that's on them, because no one actually knows what it means. And but what chance in hell have they ever got running on that if they're on an on-off switch live? They've got no chance, have they? And every time I've gone out to them as well, and they've been up at 80 degrees Celsius, and what can you do? You can't write it, can you? And the last one actually I went to was on underfloor heating, right? So the boiler was on 80 degrees Celsius flow temperature, and there was only underfloor heating in the house. Yeah. So we're heating it up to 80 for then the mixer on the underfloor heating to blend it back down again. Yeah. What can you do?
Go on,
Claire, get in the conversation.
I'm listening intently, obviously, because my knowledge is limited on this. But it sounds like it's all about education. It sounds like it's all about, there's guys out there who just aren't aware, and the manufacturers are giving false information. And Kimbo, you obviously get loads of people come to your courses who want to do the better thing, want to make their customers' heating more efficient. You obviously need to do more courses, Kimbo, but we need to we need to get the message out there, obviously, which is what we're trying to do here, and talk about this so that it does get to the masses and more people become aware. But kind of what's the answer? You know, how do we get to that situation?
It's definitely about education, and we go slightly off piece here, but as it happens, we'll be talking about something you sell, which is good. So I do as best I can to explain the difference between ordinary TRVs and these new pressure independent ones. The new, what do you call them? The RB, what is it? RB
auto balancing valves.
The auto balancing valve. See, I'm not a marketer, but I don't think that's a good name for it, because it's more than that. Auto, everybody claims everything's auto. Pumps are auto. Everyone thinks everything's automatic these days, and they're not. And you do need to set them. But if you can explain how they work, yeah, and how much better they are than anything else on the market, and what a phenomenal difference they make overnight to your system, your comfort levels, it's an easy, you know how easy, you know how many of these valves get sold now. And I get Richard sometimes phoning me up and says, yeah, you done a course Monday? I said, why? I said, oh, bloody hell, I just sold another 100 of them bloody valves. Well, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you? If someone explains to you, because when you see all these TRVs in boxes on the shelf behind the counter at the, Plumbase or whatever, to the untrained eye, they're all the same. They're just more expensive. Well, being British, we don't buy the most expensive one, and we don't buy the cheapest one. We buy the one sort of in the middle. We're all very conservative, aren't we? And so we buy one, but for an extra £5, you could buy something that would save you 100-fold that in gas consumption saving over the next 10 or 15 years. But if you can't get the information out there, if you can't explain what it is, and as you walk past the box on the shelf, you've got no chance of explaining it. And to be honest, I bet the average person, even if you read the instructions, we've all tripped over TRVs before where you can set the flow rates on, but they're not pressure independent. So if the pump pressure changes, then it all goes out the window, and it's like the usual free for all of flow going, too much flow going through the rads, too much energy, so on and so forth. So it's all about education. It's an easy sell. If you can explain to 10 blokes what priority hot water is, those 10 blokes will get it and think, bloody hell, I never realised that. Yeah, that's easy. Why aren't we doing? They say, why aren't we doing that? And the same with the pressure independent valve. So absolutely, it's absolutely about training or getting the information out there. I know Nathan, he's a teachery type guy, and he's got some fancy comment for this. But if you don't know that you don't know, that's the problem. If you know that you don't know, you can go and find out.
Do something about it.
Yeah. What we have with a lot of our guys is that they don't know that they don't know. And why would they think anything different? They've been fitting heating systems for 20, 30 years. Everything's been getting hot. They've never had any complaints. There's hot water coming out the tap. The customers can dry their clothes on the radiators, which is what we've traditionally been doing for the last forever. But I think
the difference is very clear, Kim, isn't it? Difference is very, very clear. We've got 1.6 million boilers going in a year. We're the second largest consumer of boilers in the world. I mean, there's the problem,
driven, isn't it?
Yeah, there's the problem. If people can't see that that's a problem, I don't know what else. I don't know what's going to show.
Well, I went out to one of the Dutch boilers out years ago, and they run everything's different out there. They have a housing association. So whereas in the UK we go out with our boiler of choice and we try and sell that to the customer either because we like it or there's more profit in it or whatever. It isn't like that with the housing associations. It's the other way around. They say, right, if the boiler you're going to offer me doesn't do this, and this, then on your bikes, I'm not interested. If it doesn't do those things, then we're not interested. And one of them is it's going to last 20 years. So there's a boiler out in Holland that has to last 20 years for the housing association. You can bet your bottom dollar they don't advertise that in the UK because they want to change them every 7 years.
Well, this is the problem, and I don't want to come here sort of like bashing manufacturers or anything like that. That's not the game. It's really not the game at all, and no one wants to do that. But I definitely do want to champion consumers, and at the end of the day, I think that's what all engineers should be doing if they're true engineers. You can have more clients as opposed to more callbacks. That's the way I look at it, and that's what you will get if you do a good job. I came off the tools about 6 years ago to kind of concentrate on doing designs, and it was the most shocking revelation that I had when I went into doing design work, because I was seeing work that was being presented from other designers that was basically some of the worst copy and paste stuff I'd ever seen in my life. And it was, I saw guys actually specifying condensing boilers, and yet they were still specifying. It was written on the drawings, 80/60.
Yeah.
It was like, so these boilers aren't 90% efficient. They can't ever be 90% efficient.
No, nothing like.
I don't know what the industry now needed this kick up the backside, and the fact that it's been driven from engineers inside and groups like the 𝗵𝗫𝗁𝗃 and 𝗵𝗲𝘁𝗀𝗃 and stuff like that to manufacturers, that manufacturers have actually bought into it, if you like, even maybe we're not properly thinking it through. I think is a boon, and I think it can just get better and better and better now. I really do. It's people are certainly. I mean, my training courses are selling out really quickly. I know yours are, Kim. That's a great thing. People have got a real thirst for knowledge, which is superb.
It is really good to see, and all the it just would be obviously great if we could get loads of people involved, and like we're hitting 20 people tonight. We've got 20 people watching out of 100 and however many plumbing and heating engineers in the UK.
Yeah, how many thousands? Yeah, how many thousands?
Yeah.
Everyone's turned their boilers on. You should know this, Claire.
How many heating engineers there are?
I mean, we got a lot. We got a long way to go. That's the fact. Yeah, we got such a long way to go. I mean, the beauty of these sessions is they're always recorded and they're always out there forever. So one day someone will Google it and it will come up and they'll go, bloody hell, those guys actually knew what they were talking about 20 years ago. Do you know what I mean? But that's how long things take, unfortunately. I mean, we've all been harping on about condensing boilers since they came out. I mean, that's ultimately where most of the guys who are right there now and talking about it, they've already been doing it for 10, 15 years. Do you know what I mean? It's not new to them, but the education piece when condensing boilers came out, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, I mentioned it on, I think it was because I was on Nathan's 𝗵𝗫𝗁𝗃 podcast. And, when I first had my 𝗵𝗫𝗁𝗃𝗃, which was the first sort of, before the CDI came to the UK, the Green Star CDI, they launched the German version, which was the 𝗵𝗫𝗁𝗃. So it came with a German heat exchanger, German build, wasn't UK market at all because it was massive. This thing was massive compared to the Worcesters that had been here, and came with bus controls. And I was like, well, where the hell do I put my switch live? Where's my switch live go? Do you know what I mean? Because I was what, 22. I was 22. I'd not long qualified into the gas industry anyway with my dad. And I was like, well, where's the switch live go, Dad? And he was like, don't know, mate. Don't know. And we ended up ringing Worcester up, and they're going, oh yeah, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called a TR2 controller, but it basically had a little dial on the front of it which bus controlled on a 2-wire up to the boiler. But and that's the problem then. These great boilers came across and then they got dumbed down for the UK market. And, here we are, like I said, 2022. We're doing 2 flow temp, and we need to do 2 flow temperatures. That's a fact. And we need everyone on board now, and everyone to sort of sing from the same hymn sheet. And it's not harder to do. It's easier to do. It's, you know what I mean? You get the right systems in place with the right knowledge. They're easy to do. You'll make more money, especially if you're competing against someone who's doing an S plan against you, or a Y plan, or Y plan. Christ, I mean, but what I ask for and what I try and say now is, controls manufacturers especially, please stop promoting S and Y plan. Yes, train people on how to fix them, because people still need to know how to fix these systems, and I don't see any problem with that. But please stop promoting S and Y plan. Yeah. Please try and make your controls that they'll do priority hot water. Any OpenTherm control manufacturer out there, you can do this over the OpenTherm connection really easily. If you need help with it, just ask me, because I will give you the knowledge for free. It's there. Take it. Honestly, I don't want it. I just want controls that when we specify against the boilers, we can give the best control, the installers the easiest ride possible going to fit those controls, and they can move on to the next job the same as they could with any S and Y plan system on switch lives. Because that's ultimately where it needs to be. And that's my piece. If you can do it and you've got the technical resource, we should all do now what we absolutely can. And if it's a manufacturer, please put money into it and do it. If it's installers, please just go that extra mile. If you're not sure, do the training, get clued up on it, come and see us. Like, you know, the amount of people that ring us and don't buy off us, it's unreal. But do you know what I mean? If you just want the knowledge there, we've got it. It's all here. It's all there to be taken. But just let's just move to that next step, isn't it? Because, you know, why do we want to keep hanging around in the 20th century with 20th century controls and all that crap that's out there? Let's just all push on together. The right moves are being made. Do you know what I mean? I mean, Kim referenced the auto balancing TRVs, but you know, this will come out very shortly in the future. But we've been doing some research up at Salford University on flow temperatures and stuff, and it's all coming out shortly. And we actually had the auto balance TRVs on those, and what a difference they made to that. And I can't tell you how much of a difference they did make in setup time, in ease of use, and how to do it. And I mean, I did it as any installer would. I used Drayton's online calculator for the radiator sizes. I didn't do any more than that because I could have worked it all out myself, all the flow rates and everything else. Could have worked it all out, could have set the auto balancing TRVs up myself, could have done all that, but I just used Drayton's calculator and it was perfect. Do you know what I mean? And it literally took me about 5 minutes a rad just to get, you know, just to do the calculation online, write it down, go to the rad, adjust it. That's all it took. And if we can have these products, and if we can just keep making these little chinks out of it all, we'll get there, and we will. You know, we're just that close. It's just, do you know what I mean? We are that close to it. It's, you know, it really is. But
I love all of your passion about it. So Paul Spencer's posted a comment about, you know, how many installers there are out there and how many people do the courses and stuff. But the real issue, which is what I was going to bring it back to, was the kids, the new generation. Why aren't the new generation being taught this stuff? You know, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. Doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
Well, I think it's a little bit of the blind leading the blind. Because most of the instructors in colleges have been in the industry 20, 30 years. It's their sort of put out to stud time of life where they do the last 5 years or whatever. A bit of a generalism there, but you know what I mean? You know, they're a sought after lot, the guys that have been through 25, 30 years of the heating industry. They're obviously the guys to do the training. Well, in actual fact, they're absolutely not the guys to do the training because they are so stuck in their old ways that they just keep passing on, no more than 3 rads off a 15mm pipe, and all, you know, all these other bloody horror stories that you hear. I mean, we do know where they come from, but it comes from the Cold War era, most of these old wives' tales, and we're still handing them on now. It needs a complete sweep of thought. You know, it needs, and the other problem is let's say you do a new curriculum and we throw all this new stuff in. With pipe sizing and velocity and heat loss and all that sort of stuff, and you get a clued up apprentice comes out. The first time that apprentice does something the new way, which is contrary to the old way, his boss is going to give him a clip round the ear and say, out in the field, mate, we don't do that, we do this. And that's it. The apprentice is going to say, oh, well, right, okay, we're in the real world here, this is what we really do. And it carries on that way as well. You know, it's going to be, it's like turning an oil tanker. Trying to do. I haven't got an answer for it. But it's not simple. It's not just a matter of saying to someone who runs schools or something, you know, the minister of schools or whatever it is, right, as from tomorrow we've got to set a new curriculum. Everyone's got to know this. Everyone's got to know that. Everyone's got to understand product water, because we haven't got the infrastructure of people to teach it. Nor have we got the not the knowingly willingness, but the off the cuff willingness for a guy that's been doing it for 25 years, that runs his own company, to have an apprentice come out and say, oh no, we don't do it like that anymore. Because that's the scenario you're going to be in. You're going to have the apprentice. Now, as old people, old fogies like me, I accept that with IT and all that stuff. You know, a young person comes to me and I have to say, well, okay, fine. You know, I get it that you know more about this than I do, but an old plumber ain't going to do that. He's not going to take any nonsense from a 19-year-old kid saying, oh no, you should be doing this, not doing that. You've wired your S plan up wrong or whatever.
Man, so, we've been saying this for so many years now. we've been living in this tick box culture that is just around and round and round in a circle, the same old circle. And we warned so many people when this new Part L regulations were going to come out that there was going to be a backlash, and the backlash is the fact that unfortunately I think the industry thought that its engineers dotted around the country and stuff like that were actually more qualified and more competent than they actually are. And this is no disrespect to engineers, and I absolutely don't blame engineers at all. The only thing I would ever say to engineers is that it's up to you to get your knowledge. It's not up to anybody else to give it to you. You've got to go and find it. But you cannot win when you're in a situation where you're being taught, as you just said, Kim, 3 rads off a 15 mil, and there's your rule of thumbs. I mean, I've even been sitting in colleges where they're saying that you size pumps by the static height of a building. Which is just, I mean, good God, that's very. I mean, and I promise you that it's, there's a few known sort of faces, and I recognise some wordings that are coming on from some of the comments here. So there's a few people that have been on my course. I can see that, most people when they come on the course, they don't know what a 1550 pump actually means.
No.
I don't know what the 15 is. I don't know what the 50 is. I know you're talking millimeters, Ed, you do, Kim, and as Simply does. Fair enough. All right, let's not get started. It's been a nice day. I teach in pascals and kilopascals, which is what pump settings are, KPAs, it's because 50 is the KPA. Yeah. But I always say this, and this is the thing, it's and it's slightly going off piste, as you say, Kim, just a little bit. But when you're talking about things like index circuits and pumps and getting priority and getting water to the right place at the right time, all the rest of that, you imagine like a 2-foot length of pipe, 600 millimeter length of pipe, and underneath is just like, say 15 millimeter bit of pipe, and underneath is like a 22 millimeter manifold that's running along. It doesn't matter if that 2-foot length of pipe there, you've got 2 bits of pipe either side of it that are 580 millimeters, and then another one at 560 millimeters and stuff. 3, doesn't matter if you've just got those 3 or you've got 30,000 of them running in that direction. As long as you get that flow to go over that bit that is 2 foot, it will get over 30,000 others. That's the point. Yeah. That's what index circuit is, and so everything is oversized. It's not just boilers, it's pumps, it's everything.
You're dead right there. So this new 𝗫 thing, the new low water temperature.
The addiction to monographs. You mean?
Okay, the addiction to monographs. Okay, so there's someone else who we all mutually know that's gone on there to get the qualification, and he's saying that once again, and this is the 3rd time from people that people that you trust and respect, to say that the people that are doing the training are only reading it off the PowerPoint, and that you can't ask them any questions. And they're also saying that obviously you need to add up all the flow that you need for your pipe when it's -4 outside. This particular guy is saying you need to add up all the resistances of all the circuits. Well, he's going to need a 50-meter pump, isn't he? Get around that. I mean, I've actually jotted an email off to 𝗫 and said, look, it's not the course that's the problem. It's the people that are running the courses that are the problem. I mean, I did mine down the road, and it was just horrendous. It was just horrendous.
I mean, we are in a situation of trying to train the trainers, aren't we? That's
training the trainers is going to be the difficult bit. Yeah, training the trainers. If I can just go slightly off a minute, so there's one question here I caught. I just wanted to answer. It says something here about something about DIY heat pumps running their cylinders at 55 degrees because they don't want any callbacks. So heat pumps are allowed to run their cylinders at 50 degrees. Okay, unlike gas-powered cylinders that aren't. I don't understand the logic behind that, but they're allowed to store their water at 50 degrees. Yes, that's more dangerous for Legionella. However, if you have a heat pump, you have to have an anti-Legionnaire cycle, which means that once a week or once a day, depending on the risk assessment, you've got to heat the water to a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. Now, someone just above that, London Gas, has put, what do we think of the new smart Tesla immersion as a solution to Legionella? Absolutely fantastic. Funny, I've got it there. I've added to my list of things to make sure people know that are out there, because unofficially I know that there are people now running their S&Y plans at sort of 55 degrees to get the temperature down, and then using this to get around the Legionella problem. Um,
I'm going to jump in there, 𝗵𝗲𝗁,
Yeah,
right? I'm going to jump in because actually controls can do this as well, right? So third-party controls on OpenTherm, because they can see the NTC sensor in the cylinder, okay? They can run at lower flow temperatures to the cylinder if they want. So they can run not lower flow temperatures to the cylinder, still recovering, but recover the cylinder to 50 degrees. So part of the thing that I want Drayton to do, because it's possible, is actually have the cylinder at 50 degree, you know, that you can set it at 50 with an anti-Legionella cycle once a week, because they know that. And that's my one want with OpenTherm controls, because it will nail all this overnight. If we can have the actual controls bring that cylinder up to temperature once a week for the anti-Legionella cycle, that's a winner. There's one other control out there that can do it right now. And like I said, you can reduce your cylinder temperatures as well, and, you know, get around that problem, because ultimately it doesn't matter whether it's gas or whether it's a heat pump. We're still putting energy into that cylinder. You know, do we need to heat it to 60 all the time? We don't, you know. It's that kind of thing, you know. Obviously the Tesla immersion thing, you know, it does have an anti-Legionella in it, which is great. But obviously if the immersion, like mine there, isn't right down the bottom, you're only going to anti-Legionella from there up. You know what I mean? You're not actually going to touch that bit down there. So, you know, if your thermocline is there, so if you're, 60 degree thermocline's there, you might have 20 degrees there. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, we got to watch this as well a little bit. If the immersion was right the way down at the bottom, then that's a great solution. But I mean, ultimately the primary coil on that cylinder needs to do the work. And if controls can do it, that's the beauty, that, you know, that it's all in the controls, and the more advanced the controls get, you know, I think sometimes we worry about that because we kind of lose our power. You know, we know where we are with a switch live, because you can get your multimeter out and go, I've got 230 there, 230 here, 230 there. You know what I mean? When we go to bus controls and OpenTherm controls, we kind of lose that a little bit. There's ways around it. And obviously, you know, Kim knows, Rob knows, I do training on the OpenTherm stuff. And it's actually easy if you get yourself an OpenTherm monitor. If you did a lot of OpenTherm controls, you can get yourself an OpenTherm monitor and actually look at what's going on in the connection. And that's how I assess all my controls. So all the controls we use, we always get them on the OpenTherm monitor, see their capabilities, and then I'll give them a tick off. Do you know what I mean? I'll give them a tick off out the box and what they can do. But, you know, there's so much more we can do, and so many ideas we have. We just need them took forwards, please. But, you know, it's all there. It's just literally, you know, it's all money at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, if we had all the money in the world, you know, we'd do everything we could, I suppose, wouldn't we? But, you know, it's all.
Do you think, Claire? Do you think as Drayton's protocol comes online and stuff like that, Drayton will be offering sort of like in classroom training on their control systems, stuff like that? Do you think that will happen?
Well, we did when we launched 𝗺𝗺𝗺𝗺𝗺. We did face-to-face training on the system. James went off and did 3-hour sessions with people, and we proper got involved. Not very many people came along, but as a manufacturer, I would push for face-to-face. Now that we're out of COVID dramas, I would push for that face-to-face sort of, you know, because of all these sessions that we've been doing, and, you know, the lack of knowledge that we know is out there, and the hunger for knowledge that we also know is out there from people who want to know better and want to know how to run systems more efficiently, then, yeah, I mean, it's necessary, isn't it? As a manufacturer, you've got to get people to know what your products do. Otherwise, no one's going to buy them and use them properly.
Well, the reason I ask is I mean, and Kim will back me up on this, and so will Richard, is that face-to-face, what I found out, you know, I was trying to do online training through COVID and stuff like that, and it just wasn't getting the message across. Doesn't matter how hard you were trying. I mean, some people would get it, but very, very few to do. The face-to-face is exactly what is needed, and hands-on, actually looking at the kit, you know, some practical examples, practical exercises, all those kind of things is such a boon for teaching, in my opinion. And what I'm just trying to say is that, if any other manufacturers get to listen to this, is that, get people in the classrooms. I know 𝗵𝗲𝗁 are just starting to do some stuff back up at Telford now, which is absolutely fantastic. I've been on their courses. They're brilliant.
Well, maybe we can talk, Rob and Kim, about maybe jumping into your sessions and getting those, our knowledgeable guys in with you and talking about, the same stuff that does the controls part of it.
Don't say that to Kim; he'll have a heart attack. He's already 95 miles an hour. He's already 95 miles an hour for 2 days.
Well,
got a spare place in Burnley. Monday,
what it
Tuesday,
needs.
anyone's interested?
Yeah, you know what it needs. It needs something unique, doesn't it? So I mean, there's no denying it though. The face-to-face training, it's what sells products as well. I mean, online only goes so far. I mean, if you took a group of installers up to Salford University and showed them exactly the data on that screen, 𝗵𝗲𝗁𝗻, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you see the data, they've got a massive monitor in their control room, and when you see the data on that and you see the differences that tweaking a system makes, you're like, shit, that's really good. Yeah. And you just, and like I said, the OpenTherm stuff and the testing that I did up there 2 years ago, it was amazing when you get the OpenTherm controls on there and you actually see the difference with load and weather compensation versus on-off switching. It's really pinnacle what the information you gain off that. And the same with the auto balancing TRVs. You'd never think about them. Do you know what I mean? If you, like Kim said, if you just saw it as a box on the shelf, you'd never think about it. Do you know what I mean? But when you see that data screen and you see the difference it makes, it was amazing. And for such a short period of setting up as well. And, and that's what it's all about, because you need it all. You need the flow rates right. You need the lower flow temperatures. You need the, do you know what I mean? Everything about it needs to come in, to play to get it all to work, and
we've been tasked with a wonderful job. I don't care what anybody says. If you're not into your job of doing this, and I know I've said this loads of times, but if you're not into your job of a heating engineer, God's sake, you're only here for about 80 summers. Go and do something else. Do you know what I mean? If you don't like it, go and do something else and do something you enjoy, because this is the most important thing. I mean, I love this industry. I kind of, Kim and I have said this a long time. Which is 30 years younger, so we could get, really surf the wave. I really enjoy it, because we're not going to be able to. I'm not. I know Kim's not going to be able to do it either. So it's just like, what do you do? Enjoy this time, because it's certainly probably the most interesting time that the heating industry has had for God knows how. I mean, what, 40, 50 years? Has to be.
Yeah.
What a wonderful boon.
Well, it's been awesome, guys, and everyone seems to have really loved it. There's loads of comments, not necessarily questions, but lots of comments and engagement, which is fabulous. Kim and Rob, please both post your training sessions and the details of your website or whatever on the Facebook group. If you can post it in this chat, that would be amazing, so that everyone who's on, who hasn't done it, because I see that at least one of the guys have done it, or two of the guys actually have done the courses. And obviously, Richard, you can stick the shop on there as well for the auto balancing valves, if anybody wants to have a look at those, and everything else. Oh yeah, down there. He's already got it all night long. It's been there.
Oh, I can't do the finger the right way.
But thank you all so much for your time. Thanks to you all for watching as well tonight. And we're back next week. What are we talking about next week? Heat pumps, Richard.
Or is it water quality?
Heat pumps next week.
Heat pumps.
More on heat pumps. So tune in next week, everyone, for more info on heat pumps and all that stuff. And we'll say goodnight for tonight and have a nice evening, and see you all soon.
See you
Thanks
later.
for watching, everyone. Bye.